And today on the Meet the Team interviews, I'm joined by Luke Tilman. Luke, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Chris?
Where are you joining us from?
I am in Denver, Colorado.
Ah, very nice. I was there a couple of years ago, and it's probably the coldest I've ever been in my life.
It actually hasn't snowed. It just snowed last week for the first time here in Denver, which we set a new record for like latest snowfall. So
This was in February, to be fair.
yeah,
So
okay. That's probably the coldest time of year to be here. Yeah.
And what do you do at Chronosphere?
I'm a front-end engineer or a UI engineer on the platform team. So I work on a cloud product, but on the front end.
Okay. Do we have UI engineers in other teams, or is everything UI related in the platform?
That's a good question. We have a handful of other folks that also do UI work, but they aren't like full-time front-end or UI engineers that are on some of the other teams. But yeah, most of the UI folks work on the platform, on the cloud. Yep.
And I think you're one of the longest remaining UI engineers. I mean, the company is not so old, but
I was one of the first. Yeah, I was one of the first two hired. Yeah.
What were some of the reasons you decided to join the company in the first place?
Yeah, for me, it was really kind of two things when I was looking for a job, and when I started looking at Chronosphere, one thing that jumped out at me kind of immediately was the chance to work with cool distributed systems kind of tech again. So, I have a little bit of a history or background there. So when I was looking at M3, our open source, kind of database that a lot of the tech is built around, it reminded me a lot of Cassandra, which is, something that I worked with at a previous company, which we might talk about, I think. And then other thing really, like the biggest reason I ended up joining was really the people. And I tell folks this when I interview people, interview candidates, like everybody was just super kind and empathetic. And it was really obvious, even in the interview process, that was true. And it gave me a chance to work with Sterling, who's the head of our UX, who I adore. And, we worked together at a previous company. And just the people is really what drew me, and like definitely what keeps me around even, a year and a half later. So.
Okay, cool. And okay, then you alluded to this already. What did you do before coming to Chronosphere?
Yeah. So, I've been in tech for about 20 years now. And I guess that dates me. Like I'm feeling kind of old.
It's dating.
But yeah. But yeah, I started out, kind of more full stack, spent a bunch of time in the .NET space. Like I wrote a lot of C# in my earlier days.
Did you write C# components? Or?
Yeah, I did, and did like, I remember, ASP.NET web pages and ASP.NET MVC and all sorts of, I remember all of the iterations of front end stuff in the .NET space. But yeah, I did a lot of that in my, kind of in my earlier years. I actually kind of burned out on tech in my 20s and spent like 3 years in my late 20s where I just quit tech completely, and I was a bartender for 3 years, which actually was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And like, I kind of feel like, it's not an experience I would trade for anything else. Like it taught me a lot about dealing with people and how to talk to people and so on and so forth. Like I really think like everybody should do a stint in the service industry at some point. It like gives you an appreciation for, for certain things. But I did. So I went back to tech full time, and I spent some time in ed tech. So like helping kids get into college. I worked for a company called Hobson's where we did the Common App, which is, you're probably not familiar with being over in Europe, but like it's something where a kid that's going to college can fill out one college application and use the same one to apply to like 150 different schools that all accept the same.
When I was in the UK, it was called UCAS. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's going back a while.
Yeah. So I spent some time there in ed tech, and then like most recently, I kind of alluded to it. Like I was at a company called DataStax where I worked on all things Apache Cassandra related, and that was fun. I spent some time in when I joined. I actually joined in DevRel. And so I was a developer advocate for the first 3 years there, and that was a lot of fun. It was something I'd never done before. I got to go around and travel and give talks and teach, which I really really enjoyed quite a bit. But I eventually went back to engineering full time. So,
fair enough. And we tempt you out of technical full-time retirement.
Yeah.
So, what was that tempting factor? What was the most What was the most interesting technical challenge you think Chronosphere is solving that kind of attracted you?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the scale of data that our customers are working with. So I think that provides like all kinds of unique challenges. This was true of my previous job too, where I was working with Cassandra and big distributed databases.
Yep.
Like there's just a certain set of challenges that you don't have unless you're working at a bigger scale that some of these technologies solve. And so for me, like to like put it in context of like UI front end work, when you're dealing with a huge volume of data, a huge scale of data when it comes to metrics data and things like that. We think about like things like how do you present a huge volume of data in some sort of meaningful way? Like it gets more challenging when you're dealing with a scale like that some of our customers have, or even like how do you make sure that things in the front end perform okay?
Yep.
So like when you draw charts and graphs and things like that, when there's hundreds or thousands of time series, like how do you make sure that kind of stuff performs okay? And that's like super interesting and like maybe something that you don't get to do at every job unless you're dealing with scale like that.
Yeah. So out of all the potential UI projects there may be, what are you working on right now that you're most excited about?
Yeah, I'm on a new work stream that has only been rolling for a little while. It's our dashboarding work stream. And so I'm actually working in an open source project. Like I'm doing most of my work right now in an open source project called Percy's, where we're building sort of a dashboarding solution. And it's just a lot of fun. Like it's, opportunity to work in open source again, which is always kind of cool. Like, you get to, collaborate with folks from other companies and so on and so forth. Building something greenfield, that's always fun. So yeah, I'm having a really good time kind of building this dashboarding thing from scratch out in open source. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds exciting. We'll hear more about that in the future.
Yes, for sure. Yep.
A couple of non-work related questions for now.
Yes.
What's a fun fact about you that nobody would guess? You've already revealed quite a few things, but what's something else?
That's true. Yeah. Like nobody would probably guess I was a bartender in my 20s. So I actually own a small stake in a craft brewery here in Denver that it's like a friend of mine that I've known since grade school. Like we've known each other since third grade, and he moved out here to Denver before I did and really got into the craft brewing scene and wanted to go and open his own brewery. Like, that was his dream, was to go open his own brewery. And I got the chance to invest a teeny tiny little bit of money. So I own a teeny tiny little bit of a craft brewery here in Denver, which is kind of a fun thing. Yeah.
I don't know what it's called. What's it called?
Yeah. It's called Downhill Brewing, and it's down south of Denver in Parker, Colorado.
I'm trying to think if I went there. It sounds vaguely familiar, but
yeah, they've been around for a couple of years. So yeah, if you were here recently, yeah.
Well, there we go. If you're in Denver, find some downhill beer.
Yeah, go to Downhill Brewing.
Yep. At the moment, like engineers and I think everyone in technology is often playing with cool new tools and frameworks and things like that they get excited about. What's something that you're trying at the moment that you just want to tell everyone about? You think it's really well made, it's really cool, you have it running all the time, you love using it. What's anything fit that bill?
I wouldn't say that I use it all the time or something like that, but like one thing that I've really been kind of fascinated with recently is in the open source dashboarding thing that I'm working on, there's this other project called QLang. It's CUE Lang. I think their website is qlang.org. And it's this really interesting kind of way of sort of defining contracts for things. So like we're thinking about using this for defining like sort of the structure of our configuration APIs and our plugin APIs and so on and so forth. And you can use it then to like, you kind of define it. You can define kind of structures in QLang, and then you get all this sort of validation, and you can get code generation and all kinds of other cool stuff for free. So it's like something that's like, I don't know, it's just kind of like cool little piece of technology that like I've kind of been playing around with recently, and like think it could be like have interesting applications in a lot of different spaces. Like was interested to see how it goes.
I've got super into the semantics of languages recently, and it's programming languages and human languages. And I was reading a big article about like abstract syntax trees earlier.
Yeah.
This kind of makes me think of this as well. It's like this, yeah.
I'm I did a little like side thing here at Chronosphere where for some of our GraphQL generation, like we do a little bit of custom generation for our GraphQL API, like where we generate TypeScript code from it, and I got to do some stuff with abstract syntax trees and like all that kind of good. It's like yeah. It's a fun topic. ASTs.
All right, let's get back out of the back to a lighter question. If you're an animal, what would you be?
I would be a dog. And I have two. My wife and we have two, and I adore them. And I think I would probably just live my best, lazy, eating, sleeping, playing. Like I would live my best life.
Any particular breed or?
We have two Lhasa Apsos basically. So they're like little, like about 20 pounds, and they kind of look like Ewok. They kind of have Ewok faces. Like they kind of look like Ewoks from Star Wars.
I might have a friend who has one actually. I think now I could think of it.
Yeah, they're adorable. Yeah.
Okay, and they're small, I guess. Or
they're pretty small little dogs. Yep, cool. It's lap dogs for sure.
You do keep raising a Star Wars mug, so we can go to.
That's true. Yeah.
Who is someone you've considered a role model in your life or career, and that's helped you in some way?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I think like maybe it's a little corny to say it, but I think I'd probably say my parents played a huge role, and like at different points and for different reasons in my life. So like especially early on, my mom I think is the one who really instilled my work ethic and a love of learning that I still have to this day, kind of learning new things. She got me reading at a really young age, like reading fiction and things like that. And that's something that I still do, pretty much every day. Before I go to bed, I lay down with usually some trashy sci-fi or something like that and do a little reading. And then, later in my career or later in my life, especially once I got into my work career, my dad's played a huge role. My dad's been a software engineer, for 30, 40 years now. Well, yeah, probably about 40 years now. And so, just being able to like call him up anytime anything work related is going on. And, he does the same thing I do for a living, or I do the same thing he does for a living, and be able to go out and have a beer. And, he's done some work in open source. He works for Pivotal, and he works in open source projects and stuff like that as well. And so, yeah, he's just been like a wealth of knowledge and like really helpful, helping me talk things through and that whole thing, So yeah, tech is like, I mentioned my dad, and like tech is really a family business for us. Like I have two younger brothers that are one's a DBA and one just went to code school. Like he did code boot camp a couple of years ago, and now he's a programmer. And then of my other two brothers, one of them is in code boot camp right now. So I'm about to have a third brother. So like we've got one holdout of my four brothers that isn't in tech yet. So we'll see where that ends up.
My grandfather kind of was, but my father, no.
No. Yeah.
And what's a quote you reflect on? It may be from your parents, maybe from someone else that you mention to people a lot, or that motivates you.
You know what? I asked my wife. I asked my wife this last night because I'm like, I don't really have a quote, do I? Like that I reflect. Like she's like, no, and I was like, but it would be like if I had a quote, it would probably be like I quote a movie or something a lot. And she was like, oh, it has to be Run Away from Monty Python, like in the Holy Grail.
Oh, okay.
Like where I find myself going, run away all the time.
If that's a motivational quote. But.
No, it's not at all motivational. But yeah, like I do find myself quoting movies a lot, but I can't say that I really have like an inspirational, like I've never really been inspirational quotes kind of person. So
run away from the JavaScript dependencies.
There is a lot in our job that where that quote is useful. Like, yeah.
All right, Luke, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, it's been fun.